So I'm afraid this lecture is very difficult. It's very difficult for me, and I'm sure it's going to be difficult for you, and I'm sorry about that. I wish I was doing moral philosophy, which is much easier. But these basic questions about action seem to me of ferocious difficulty, and obviously great importance. So I find myself sort of immersed in a muddy pond of the thoughts of others, trying to make sense of how best to shape things up so that action is possible, which would be nice. The main question that I'm after today is how we are to understand the relation between the neural changes that take place in the head, at least in our heads, and the bodily motions that take place, one supposes, as a result of those neural changes, and where in that process to put the agent. If anywhere, you might think there is no room for an agent. All the available space has been taken up by other things. You know how it is in philosophy. There are things you want to say that you're going to say anyway, and you just hope that you can get away with it. And it seems to me that this is often the case with supposing that we can think of ourselves as active in the midst of this causal flow. So that's the question, or the general area. I'm going to start by reading. I'm a great fan of Harold Prichard, who taught in Oxford before the Second World War, roughly. And when Prichard says something, you have to watch out, according to me. That's why I've written more articles on Prichard than anyone else in the world, which is clearly a mistaken position to be in. So here, is something that Prichard says. We should at first say that to do something is to originate or to bring into existence, i.e. really to cause, some not yet existing state. Now, you don't need to take the word state too seriously here. Let's draw it as something. It could be a change. Maybe a change isn't a state. But to do something is to cause some change. Now, the reason why I'm interested in this is that recently the idea that action is the causation of change has become prominent. In my mind, largely through the work of John Hyman and Maria Alvarez, with an absolutely fantastically good paper called, now I've forgotten the title, Agents and Their Actions, or something like that, in which they promote the idea that to act is just to cause some change or other. Right? Now, it can be non-human agents, there can be chemical agents. A chemical agent, the weather causes changes, the weather is an agent, the wind causes tides, the actions of the winds and the tides. Those are the winds and the tides causing certain changes. Intentional actions will be special, of course, we hope. Now, it's rather you might suppose that the difference between the intentional actions and the, as it were, non-intentional actions of the winds and the tides lies in the way they are explained, if you think that explanatory differences can make real differences. So we might think that intentional actions are explained by the reasons for which they are done, and the actions of the winds and the tides are not explained in that sort of way, but in some other way, more familiar, causal. Anyway, here is an approach to the notion of an action, which is very different from saying that an action is an event that is caused in a certain way. So when we think about intentional action, it has been common in the recent past, the last 50 years or so, to think that human action is bodily motion, largely caused by psychological states of the agent, beliefs and desires. The action is the motion, and it's an action because of its cause. The action is not those bodily emotions being caused by the beliefs and desires, it's that motions themselves when caused in this kind of way. That was the theory as it was propounded. Now, I'm not maintaining that human bodily actions are the motions that are caused either by us or by anyone else. I maintain that the actions are the causings of those things. They're not causes, they're not effects, they're causings. And a causing is, if like, instantiation of a causal relationship. It's not the cause. The cause, in the case I'm talking about, is me. When I act, I am the cause. That which I achieve, what I cause, may be, standard example, the rising of my arm, something in my hand. But the action is neither me, nor is it my hands going up. It's my causing the hand to go up. Now, I like this view. I don't know how to argue for it, but it seems to make room for all the things that I want to say. So that is the view that Prichard appears to be shooting at. For he says, we should at first say that to do something is to originate or to bring into existence, really to cause some not yet existing thing, some result, as Hyman and Alvarez would put it. Now, Prichard attributes that view to Cook-Wilson, amazingly. So this view has a history. If only people who have regularly cited this paper by Prichard had read it, they would have noticed this view appearing and that it had a history, which it does. However, I'm not talking about Prichard, Cook-Wilson today. I'm talking about Prichard, and after that, Alvarez and Hyman. So what does Prichard say? Now, as far as I can see, this account of what an action is, though plausible, and having as a truth underlying it that usually in acting we do cause something, is not tenable. And the next bit follows on immediately. Unquestionably, the thing meant by an action is an activity. And if we ask ourselves, is there such an activity as originating or causing a change in something else, then we have to answer that there is not. To say this is, of course, not to say that there's no such thing as causing something. Of course there is such a thing as causing something, but only to say that though causing a change may require an activity, it is not itself an activity. It's as if the causing is too thin to be a real activity. So, digging is an activity and that causes a change. But what about the causing of the change? Is that another activity? One feels that there should be something kind of meaty about the activity, and causing is that thin relation, the instantiation of a causal relationship between cause and effect. The making happen that has no body to it. It's mere causing. Apparently, we can't do that. So there's a worry. If one says to act is to cause a change, it looks as if you're identifying acting with too thin a relationship. There will always be an activity involved which will not itself be causing, but that by doing which you cause whatever it is. So that seems to me an interesting challenge to the claim that to act is to cause a change. It says that causing is too thin a notion to be itself an account of what it is to act, though it's true that when you act, you cause a change. And then that's the first point. Right? The second thing that Prichard says is a little bit later, and this is related to my main theme in another way. Where we have willed some movement of our body and think we have caused it, we cannot have directly caused it. For what we directly caused, if anything, must have been some change in our brain. The reason why he says that, evidently, is that the motions of the body are the effects of changes in the brain, and that's just as it were given. So if you're going to, if you like, interrupt the course, I was going to say, of my lecture, the course of events, you've got to do it by getting in early. Right? You've got to do it by messing about with your brain. That'll change what your hands do. And the motions of the hands are merely the effects of this other thing that comes first, which is the neural events, of which we may or may not be in control. Let's hope we are. Because if we aren't, then we are not capable of being agents. Since it won't be we who do the causing, but neural stuff. And yet we feel it should be possible to tell a story under which somehow we share causal power. Well, that is not a serious suggestion, but we want to get these things and us into the story of how we get to act. That's what I mean by that. So on the question of the neural, here's a quotation from Alvarez and Hyman on your sheet. Has everyone got it? Without the handout, you are completely lost in this lecture. We do not wish to deny that when an agent causes a bodily movement, an event, perhaps in the agent's nervous system, causes the same bodily movement. But the agent's action is not identical with this event. So the event, the bodily movement, has two causes, me and neural changes in my brain. And then there's a question how to make sense of that. I mean, it sounds suspect, doesn't it? Yeah. And it is suspect. So I'm not going to say that. At least not, I'm trying not to. Okay, so I got a problem. How to capture the role of neural events in one's account of an action as the causing of a change, which I want to stick to. Actions are the causings of changes, either in your own body or outside, as when you move a glass. To move a glass is to cause a change in the location of the glass. You can do that by moving it. That's a way of causing a change. And there's a question along the way, which is to do with a regress. Is there some way in which stopping a regress by appeal to a mental act of willing is preferable to stopping it by appeal to basic physical acts? And here I say bodily movements transitive, BM little t. Now that, many people here will know what that means, others I'll just explain it to. BM is bodily movements, little t is transitive, and later on you get BM little I. So we've got transitive and intransitive. This is Jennifer Hornsby's locution. When my body moves, that is intransitive motion, the body changes, moves in one place to another. When I move my body, that is like moving a glass. That's the transitive notion, where there is an object of the moving, which is the glass. Now, basic physical acts might be understood as the body's moving, but then we want to make sure that we get into the story. That sort of moving is intransitive, the motions of the body. Are those all physical acts of the agent? No, they're not. You have a twitch. Then there are the bodily movements transitive, which are movings of the body, as we might say, by the agent. So look back to Prichard, the Prichard quote in the third paragraph. Where we have willed some movement of our body, you can hear that transitively or intransitively. If you hear it transitively, what you will is the moving of your body by you, which is an action. The action is what is willed. If you hear it intransitively, what you will is the body's motion, where what is willed is not an action, it's a change. So we need to keep these things, this is just the beginning, right? Carefully in mind. Bruce Orne, I don't know how to pronounce his name, writes, the principle behind Pritchard's claim, and this is the claim that to cause a change, causing of a change is not itself an activity. Yeah. The principle behind this claim is statements of the form thing or person S causes event E are to be understood as elliptical for statements of the form there is an A such that A is an activity by S and A causes E. So the activity causes the change. But that's a wrong account of what Prichard is after. What he's after, he isn't challenging the idea that agents cause changes. He wants to understand it, not to replace it. He only wants to identify the activity by which they do the causing, since causing itself is not an activity we can get engaged in. So what is the activity by doing which we cause the changes we cause? You might think, well, when I cause a hole in my garden, I do it by digging. When I cause the rising of my hand, I do it by raising it. These are how I do it. But then the question is, how do I raise it? And it looks as if there should be an answer to that. And Pritchard's answer is by willing to raise it. So this is not, of course, all action now. It's the action of those creatures capable of willing, like us. And there is no question, one might hope, of how you get to will something. That is where it all starts. Anyhow, the activity concerned is willing, and it's in willing that we are active. Right? And what you do is will, and then changes occur. You cause them because they are the changes that you willed. So you do cause the results that you are after, as it were, but your causing them is a thin notion, and the way in which you do it is a thick notion, like digging, except when it's willing. Now one might ask, why should there always be an activity of the same sort whenever agents cause changes? I'm thinking of Prichard and willing now. But forgetting the willing thing, agents in general, what about the tides, the winds and the tides? They cause changes. Why should there be a single activity that is involved whenever anything causes anything? That seems like a perfectly good question, and it's a question that Prichard ordinarily would be sensitive to, so I'm just giving you my Prichard thing here. Prichard, when faced with the question, why should we read books, said, there is no single answer to this. There are many, it depends on the book. But the answer is you shouldn't in some cases. Not this one anyway. Why should we obey the law, which is where he's really going in all this? Is there always going to be one and the same reason? Maybe some philosophers of law would like it to be so, because it would be simpler. But in fact, there are many different reasons for obeying different laws, and it's just simply an open question. There's no general reason. So why should there be an activity of the same sort whenever anybody causes a change? So we might say in response to Prichard, there is indeed no activity of causing a change. That isn't an activity. But every causing of a change is an activity of some other sort. And every activity is the causing of a change. So that by doing which we cause a change is always solid, as it were. It's not the thin notion of causing. But every activity is the causing of some change or other by doing, by doing whatever the activity consisted in. You can't just, well, anyway, Walking is causing a change by doing that walking thing. Writing is causing a change in a certain way. So Jonathan Lowe, much regretted, thought of the basic form of a causal statement like this: agent A caused event E, change C, by Ving. There had to be a by in this. There's no... right. Now, could that be what Prichard meant when he said that though causing requires an activity, it is not an activity? Well, I don't think so, because for him it's got to be the same activity every time, whereas I'm thinking that you cause some sorts of changes by writing and other sorts of changes by digging and further changes by saying things and so on and so forth. There's no common way of causing anything, but it might still be true that you cannot just cause things. So suppose we take this reply to Prichard. There is no activity of causing a change, but every causing of a change is an activity of some other sort as well. So the causal relationship is thin, but that by which we cause is not. Well, we're allowing that nothing just causes anything. If an action is the causing of an event by an agent, there must be some way in which the agent does it. I cause the rising of my hand. I don't cause the raising of my hand, I do that. I cause the hand to go up by raising it. That's the activity. I have other methods. I can ask you to raise it. But this time, I'm causing something by, and there's the activity, raising. That is a genuine, meaty activity. Are we then to say that the activity involved causes the change, so that the raising causes the rising? No. According to me, the cause of the change is the agent, not the raising. Action is the causing of changes by the agent. So what does the causing is the agent. There may be a way the agent does it, but it's the agent that's the cause still. This keeps us firmly at this, where we want to be, don't we? Yeah. The activity, there is an activity whenever an agent causes a change, and the activity involved is the agent's causing that change in a certain way. It's the way in which the agent does it. That seems okay to me. And do we get a regress out of this? Well, I don't think so. I think you would get a regress, perhaps, if you put two thoughts together here. One, that one causes B by doing something else A, and that all doings are themselves causings. This is the sort of way in which regresses get started, by having premises, as it were, of that sort of form. And I think you would get a regress if you started in that way. But the view I'm suggesting to you, the view of 3, does not maintain that one causes B by doing something else, A. It isn't that I raise my arm by doing something else. My raising my arm is my causing my arm to rise by raising it. So there's some, right? So it's not thin, it's thick. So it isn't that I raise it by doing I cause my arm to rise by doing something else. The way in which I do it is not another thing that I do that has this as the effect. Yeah, right. Now, just a swipe at Prichard at 9 here. He supposes with Jonathan Lowe that there is a regress, then we need to stop it by willing. So our basic actions will be willings, and everything else flows from that. So I cause changes by, some changes I can cause by willing them to occur. Not many, but some. And all the other things that I do are the effects of my willings of those things to occur, so of these things, further effects. Now, for Prichard, willing is an activity, if it happens at all, and there is no activity by doing which one wills. I don't see why I shouldn't say the same about causing one's fingers to move. I think if I can just will, I can just move my fingers. There shouldn't be a problem about that. We have, in order for there to be regress, we have to be forced into it, and we are not forced into it. So I'm just leaving that's it, all I have to say about the regress. So now I turn to neurophysiology. How are we doing? Yeah. And here things do get difficult, I think. They were bad enough anyway. Now, Alvarez and Hyman introduce a notion of a result, the result of an action, and this is an important notion. They take it that simple bodily movements I, that's to say bodily motion, the rising of my hand, these are the results of actions that I do. The action in this case is raising. So the raising of my hand has the result that my hand rises, and it may have further effects beyond that. The effects lie beyond the action. The result is, as it were, within it, because causing my hand to rise sort of contains the rising that is so caused. So simple movements of the body, that my hand's going up, this is the intransitive notion, the change in location of my hand, is the result of a simple bodily movement, which is the raising of my hand. So raising my hand is causing my hand to rise, and the rising of the hand is the result of my raising it. Talks of effect come later. So the result is closer to the action. It's in a sense part of the action. The action is the causing of a certain result. That's what it consists in. So stick to that. Now, as far as that goes, we've got a story as to how we move our hands. The motions of our hands are ordinarily the results of our moving them in certain ways, and this is something that lies within our powers. We have that power, there's no magic to it, we can do it. Things, however, cannot be left in such a happy state. So now the question is, there's a question that's driven by the notion of a basic action. What is it by doing which we do other things? Hyman and Alvarez understand a basic action as a causing. All actions are causings. A basic one is a causing whose result is not the effect of some other action of ours. Okay, so when I knock the glass over with my hand, which I'm not going to do, but I may yet do, I knock the glass over. When the glass is falling over is the effect of my moving my hand. So I do knock the glass over, but the glass is ending up on the side is the effect of some other causing by me, the causing of my hand to move, my moving of my hand. So the motion of my hand is the result of my action, and the glass is being knocked over is the effect of that action. And it's an action because it's me causing. To act is to cause a change. I am causing a change. The basic action in this case is that by doing which I do all the further things. The result of the action is one thing and further effects are others. So the question now is, are our bodily motions, are our bodily movings, our movings of our body, our basic actions? Those bodily movements are themselves the effects of neural changes. And this is where the problem lies. Is it that our basic actions are really the causings of those neural changes? That's possible. If so, our basic actions are ones we know nothing about, but which have as effect, their results are the neural changes which the action consists in the causing of. And the bodily motions that we're after are mere effects of that, though we cause them too, and so our bodily actions are not our basic actions. That's not such a disaster. You know, who cares what is basic? Let's go with whatever we get. Still, the picture sort of generates difficulties. Alvarez and Hyman say this: a bodily motion, the rising of my arm, can have a cause, which is neural, and a causer, which is the agent. So we have, like, both so here is one and the same event, which has both a cause and a causer. And this has got not just to be language, it's got to have some reality to it. Right? So there are going to be two causal relations. There is event causation, where one event causes another. That's the familiar notion of causation. And here we have a neural event causing a bodily motion, macroscopic. That's all event causation. But then there's also agent causation, which is quite different. Event causation is where you have one event standing in the causal relation to another event. Agent causation is where the thing that is the cause is not an event. It's me. I am not an event. I'm a causer. So we keep the word cause for event causation. We'll have to have causers for not event causation. And we'll hope to keep things on the road that way. Right? So my bodily motions have a cause, namely neural changes, and a causer, which is me, by virtue of the fact that I am the causer of the neural changes, though not their cause, we hope, since I'm not an event. Right. So one question is, are we to understand the bodily motions as effects of neural changes? To that question, it seems as if the answer has to be yes. When I move my body, I'm at 13 here, when I move my body, the relevant motion is an effect of neural events. If I cause those events, then my causing those events would be my basic actions, because they're the things by doing which I cause other things, by causing which I cause other things. If I don't cause those neural events, how can I be the causer of their effects? I can't. The only way I could do it is by causing the neural events. But if I wanted to say that the neural events are causes of the bodily emotions, what room is there left? What is there left for me to do? It looks as if it's going to happen anyway. There's nothing left for agency to achieve in this. Things are set up and will happen. So this is not comfortable. So perhaps we might feel ourselves tempted to say that what our basic actions are causings of neural changes. So I cause the neural changes. I am the causer of them. I'm not an event. So I don't cause them, but I am their causer. These will be my basic actions, causings of neural changes. Well, Alvarez and Hyman say, I do not cause the neural events to occur. So they deny that line. I ensure that they have occurred. This is how it works. I ensure that they have occurred by performing an action whose result is sure to be the effect of such a neural event. That's how it... So I don't cause them from in front, as it were. I ensure that they have occurred by aiming at the bodily motion. Well, what does cause them then if I don't? Answer, well, it has to be something else, like prior neural things, or something like that. Something has to cause them, and it's not me, apparently. I can think of three possible answers to the question, what causes the neural changes? One is nothing. The other is me, but they've ruled that out. And the third is something else. I think that's probably the lot. And since nothing is surely unacceptable, we have to choose between me and something else. Me is ruled out, so it's got to be something else. But if it's something else that does it, it looks as if I am locked into the causal nexus, effectively. The neural changes are happening for whatever reason they happen. And there's nothing much for me to do except go along with the flow. Now, this is not what we were hoping for. So I don't think that will work, but still one does want to tie the two relations together, the causal relation and the causing relation, like the event causation and agent causation. So here's the suggestion that seems to me at least worth trying. What the agent causes is a causal process, a series of causally linked events or stages. The neural is at one end, and the overt physical is along the way, at least. And I can cause maybe further as I push the glass on the table, the glass and so on, out beyond the body. Of course, I can have it. I can achieve things that don't just concern my body. So the action is the causing of a certain process, which has a neural stage and a macroscopic stage, with the muscular in between. I haven't mentioned the muscular yet, but that needs to come in. There will be muscular changes which I cause. Right. What we're doing here is abandoning the focus on the final stage. We thought the action was the moving of my hand. It was not the causing of neural changes. Instead, we're thinking the action is not especially the moving of the hand, it is the causing of a certain process which has the moving of the hand in which it plays a certain role. And, of course, which we are aiming at, or which is that which we have reason to do. So we'll have to get away from the idea that the action of raising the hand is just the action of causing the hand to rise. In fact, it's the action of causing a process of which the rising of the hand is a later stage. And the process is a causal process. It's not just a series of events, it's a causal process. Now, this isn't the same as causing the neural events to cause the hand to rise, because once the neural events are done, they'll do that anyway. I don't have to watch out for that bit. So I'm not causing the neural events to have a certain causal power or to get a certain causal power. If they happen, they'll have that power whatever I do. What I'm doing is not causing them to cause, but causing a series of stages that stand in a causal relation to each other. I'm neither trying to endow neural changes with causal power nor change their causal powers. They can do their stuff perfectly well without my help. So now, that's just a suggestion. In fact, and in this area, it seems to me any suggestion we should be gratefully received. So I'm expecting your thanks at this point. All right? But of course, there are worries about it, like there are worries about. One worry that doesn't concern me at all is that the first stage of the process that the action is the causing of is something of which I am entirely ignorant, since I know nothing whatever about neurophysiology, and nor do you, I expect. But this doesn't worry me at all. I don't expect epistemology to get its nose in here. I know nothing about muscular changes either. That doesn't disturb me. It may be that the process I am causing is one of which I have no knowledge in the ordinary way. That doesn't render me incapable of instigating it. Indeed, you might think that what very young children do is to acquire the capacity to control such processes without any knowledge of them. So a child that's learning coordination effectively is achieving a kind of appropriate match between the neural and the physical. And this has to be learnt. But it's not something that any of us knows how to describe. At least probably not in this room anyway. So we shouldn't say that what I cause is just or really the first stage in the process, and then I let it all go on as it may. I cause the whole thing, of which I may know only the later stage and only aim at that. I don't know how to do the things separately, as it were, that would lead to that. I don't know. I can't aim at the neural changes. It's meaningless. No? There's only one way, however, of achieving the bodily motion that I am trying to cause, and that is the neural way. The other thing is, of course, you should remember that we don't always even aim at motions of the body. I mean, Anscombe gives us lots of nice examples, but here's a sort of further one. If you imagine yourself in front of a computer screen with a dot on it that's moving around, and you're given a pencil and told to keep the point of the pencil on the dot, where will you be looking while you're doing that? You won't be looking at your hand, though your question is, as it were, how to move my hand. So what you're doing is trying to keep the point of the pencil on the dot. That's what you're looking at. But the process, of course, the focus of attention, therefore, tells you very little about the process. So what's my basic action? It's not the causing of the bodily motion. It's not the causing of the neural changes. It's the causing of the process. How do I do that? By raising my arm. That's a slightly hard thought, that. One worries that the regress is created again, or a circle. So we can ask whether I did in fact cause the neural events, neural changes, and if so, how I did it. The answer is at most, I think, I did it by causing the process of which they are a stage. They are one stage, and the bodily motions are another stage. It's a process. One could say I cause whatever changes are required for my arm to rise. But I don't like that quite. It's as if I have a menu. It's better to say, I think, that I cause the whole process, and my relation to that process is not identical to my relation to any of its stages. It's outside in rather than inside out. So there's an alternative suggestion you might try. How am I doing? The occurrence of the neural events is part of the story of how I cause the bodily motion. That's how I do it. But this supposes that my action is really the causing of the bodily motion, rather than the causing of the process. And that's what I'm trying to deny. So I'm not interested in the story of how I cause my arm to rise. I'm interested in the story of how I cause the process that culminates in that. Alternatively, we might say the neural events, not part of the story of how I cause it, they're part of the story of how it works that the body gets to move. It's not about how I do it, therefore. It's about how it works. And indeed, there's no story about how I do it. I just raise my hand. There's no story about that. So if the neural events are part of how it works, must I not also cause them in addition to causing the process of which they are a part? Mustn't my agency be, if you like, divided up among the stages? Maybe I cause the first stage and then sit back. Or maybe I don't quite sit back, I'm continuing to watch in case things don't go right. And if I don't go right, I'll nudge it a bit. I don't think that's the right way to think about it. I think the best resort to all these difficulties is just stick to the, I'm jumping a bit here, to stick to the view that I cause a process that is a causal process. It consists in neural changes causing bodily motions. I don't cause the neural events, and I don't cause the bodily motions in any other sense than that. And I think, if you like, though you might think that this is at odds with the way in which we know nothing of the neural and our focus is entirely on the overt physical. But that I am not much moved by as a worry. Seems to me perfectly okay to think of me as causally related to the bodily motions in virtue of a prior relation to a process, of which those bodily changes are a later stage. And that's quite enough. Thank you all for listening.